Welcome. My name is Deborah Gonzalez and I'm going to be your instructor for this series on social media and the law. Now today, our first session, what I want to do is get through some basics with you. So we're going to begin with what is social media. Then I want to look at some of the types of social medias that are used by attorneys. We're also going to look at what is social media law per se, and then social media's use in the legal profession. So if you're ready, let's begin. Now the first question is, what is social media and why is it important? And I'm sure everybody has their own idea or definition. And basically most people will say is, I can't really give you a definition, but I know it when I see it. Facebook is social media, for example. But what I want you to think about is social media as a way of communicating, a way that our clients are communicating when they're doing business or when they're running their lives, okay? So it's a way of communicating with others, but it's also a way of interpreting what's happening around them and the way that they view their world. So it's very important to understand it so that we'll be able to do our due diligence for our clients. Besides being a method of communication, it's also affecting the way that we communicate in other medium and through other methods, and then how we as lawyers litigate and deal with our clients. I'd like to point your attention to a YouTube clip called Social Media Revolutions Social Economics 2011. Now, for those of you who are not so familiar with social media, this is a great clip, very short, that you can find on YouTube, very upbeat music, but it'll give you some of the examples and trends of what's going on with social media. And I think you'll find it very interesting. But for now, let me give you some specific stats as it deals with attorneys and social media. We know, for example, that over 63% of large firm lawyers will personally maintain an online presence. And when we talk about that online presence, we're also talking about it separately from the online presence of their firm. We know that 62% of individual lawyers use the social networking platform of LinkedIn. We also know that only 7% of lawyers are using a microblogging social media platform called Twitter. And we'll get into each of these later on, but some more statistics for you to know is 88% of attorneys right now are using smartphones. So things from the iPhone to the Android to a BlackBerry. These are phones that have the capacity to be able to access the internet and online browsing. 15% of attorneys actually use a tablet. And of those 15% who are using the tablet, 89% of them use an iPad, which is not very surprising. So let's take a look with that background at some of these social media networking platforms. And we're going to begin with probably the biggest one and the one that's probably the most familiar to the majority of you, and that's Facebook. Now, Facebook was founded in 2004 by Mark Zuckerman. And what's important to understand about Facebook is actually its evolution. How did it begin? It began as a very exclusive site for Harvard students, which was then opened up to allow just about everybody. And right now, it currently boasts over 800 million users. Now, if we were to put that in terms of population of countries, that would make Facebook the third most populous country in the world after China and India. So imagine, the US only has 333 million people, but Facebook has 800 million users. Now what's interesting about Facebook is it's really touted as sort of social life online. People use it on a very personal way, putting up photos of their family, putting up photos of their vacation, and putting things like posts of what they're doing, what they like, what movies, what music, and things of that nature, and just sharing. Very, very social. Okay, now this is different from the second social media networking site that I'd like to bring up, with this Twitter. Now, some of you may be familiar with blogs, which are sort of long posts where people would talk about different things that are happening, current trends, or a specific topic that they might be interested in. There are lawyers who blog about specific areas in their practice areas. But what Twitter does, and it's called a microblogging site because individuals only have 140 characters in which to convey a message or to say something. Now, in the beginning, Twitter came out in 2006. And in the beginning, people sort of belittled it. They didn't take it seriously at all, because how many times do you want to know that somebody walked their dog or what they had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for lunch? But what we've seen is that Twitter has really evolved to begin having some pretty important conversations and dissemination of information that can be very useful in terms of what we do in our legal practice. So it's been changed from just broadcasting what people are doing every day of little consequences to actually being a mechanism of conversation between individuals and that sharing of information. It is estimated that there are right now about 200 million Twitter accounts and over 100 million tweets, which are those posts on Twitter, that are happening every day. And we have some very interesting individuals actually tweeting, everybody from Obama, our president, to some celebrities. Ashton Kutcher was actually the first person to have reached over 1 million followers on his Twitter account. Now that idea of followers is very important. Twitter actually has its own nomenclature of specific vocabulary and terms. What's a tweet? What's a hashtag? Well, followers are individuals that actually have clicked in so that they can receive all the tweets that you put out and all your posts. So they can follow you, and they follow these accounts. Now, in the beginning, it was all about the numbers. How many followers do you have? The more followers you have, the better it was for you. But what we've discovered with social media and the way it's evolved is that it's not really about how many followers. It's not the quantity of your followers. It's actually about the quality of your influence on your followers. So for example, I can have 1 million followers, but if I put out a call that I'm having an open house or I'm going to give a session or a webinar on a topic and only 5 people show up out of that 1 million followers, I don't have much influence at all. But if I have 100 followers and 80 of them show up, well, now we're talking about the whole idea of digital clout and how much influence I have. And this is going to be a very important nuance for your business clients as they go out and use and talk about, their return on investment on these types of social media platforms. Now, are attorneys on Twitter? Yes. In fact, Justia actually put up a website called justialegalbirds.com. And what it is a sort of listing of the different attorneys and what they tweet about so that it's easy for you to find an attorney that might be tweeting in your particular practice area. So check it out because it's quite interesting and can offer you a lot of good resources. Now, another social media platform that I want to talk about is YouTube. Now, most people will think of YouTube as you might get an email and somebody says, look at this funny little clip. And you notice that when you click on it, it actually goes to a site that says YouTube. YouTube is a holding place for audio-visual clips and people to share these sort of mini films and movies that they've put on. Most of them are quite funny in nature, but a lot of them are also educational. Now, YouTube was founded in 2005, and Google actually bought it out for $1.65 billion. That's a B, not an M, in terms of their cost. In 2011, it was estimated that there were YouTube views of over 200 million a day, as well as they say that over 24 hours of video content is uploaded every minute to YouTube. This is truly a global phenomenon. It's not just about US uploads, it's uploads from all over the world. Now, to be fair, YouTube is not the only video place that you can go to. There's actually another one called Vimeo, V-I-M-E-O, that's also used to put up some of these clips. Now, the great thing about YouTube and Vimeo is you can actually have your own channel for your law firm or your law practice where you can put up different video clips of you talking about some of the things in your practice area. What I want to do now is talk about our next social media networking platform, probably one that's on the top of every attorney's list, and that is LinkedIn. Now, Facebook was the social side and the personal side of life. LinkedIn is the professional and the business side of life. LinkedIn is used as a way to create your professional Rolodex of connections and contacts, as well as an electronic version of your resume or your portfolio. Okay. It was founded in 2003, and in June 2010, it actually surpassed over 70 million users. And what we know is that of those users, more than 2 million of them happen to be attorneys. In July of 2010, LinkedIn actually partnered with JD Supra to be able to offer legal information and content through the LinkedIn platforms. So one of the things that attorneys on LinkedIn can actually do is offer some of their writings and blogs and articles related to legal information through their LinkedIn platforms. Okay. It's estimated that a new member will join LinkedIn every second of every day. So, one of the key things about what makes LinkedIn so powerful is the idea of groups. What you can do is once you're a LinkedIn member and have your profile, you can actually click on the Groups tab and do a search related to something that you might be interested in. So let's say I'm interested in animation, and I put in the search box animation. It'll come up with a series of groups of people who are interested in animation, or maybe animators, or maybe illustrators, or in the creative animation film industry. Another social media networking platform that many attorneys have a presence on is called Avvo, A-V-V-O. Now, the name Avvo is actually short for avvocato, which is the Italian word meaning lawyer. And it was put together in 2007 by an individual who, what this was meant to be, was only a platform for attorneys and a way for clients to find an attorney and be able to ask questions, legal questions, to some of the things that were going on, and have attorneys then answer those questions. But Avvo is a little controversial. Some individuals or attorneys really question the idea of having a social media network that ranks attorneys, gives attorneys rankings, or let attorneys gain points for answering a question or putting up a legal guide. Is it just a popularity contest? Or should there be more when it comes in terms to reviewing an attorney's credentials and actually recommending them? So, take a look at it. The other thing that you should know about Avvo is actually they scour the Bar Association databases, those attorneys who actually are registered, and put up a profile, and then each attorney needs to go and claim the profile. So you may not even realize this, but you might actually have an Avvo profile already. So you might just want to go and check and see what there is and what it actually says about you, just to be forewarned. The last social media networking platform that I want to talk about is one that is relatively new, and it's Google+. Actually launched in June of 2011. The idea of Google+ sort of took people by surprise and sort of said, well, what is this? Is this sort of like the personal one of Facebook, or is this going to be more professional like LinkedIn? And right now we still don't know. It's still new. But one of the things to keep in mind with Google+ is the idea that it has something called circles, as well as another concept called Hangout. And this is going to be very important for your clients and how you connect with different individuals in your profession. When you have the capability of putting in circles in your Google+ platform, you can actually categorize individuals that you are being connected to. So you can have a family circle, a friend circle, a professional circle, and then direct information or posts or status updates to each specific circle on its own, and don't have that communicated to other circles or other individuals in other circles. Hangouts actually allow you to set up sort of an online chat room where everybody can come together to be able to discuss a particular issue. And one of the more exciting ones was a hangout with actually the Dalai Lama. So we can see how Google+ is making their inroads. They said that Google+ actually gained 1 million followers within its first month of being launched, and it took Facebook almost 3 years to get that same amount of users. So we'll have to see where this social networking platform is going and what's that going to mean for our clients and for our practices. So now with just that basic overview of some of the social media platforms that attorneys are on, what I want to do now is look at specifically how attorneys are using them. And the first thing you need to know is think about what are your goals for being on social media? Why have your firm out there? Why put yourself out on these platforms? And there are some very specific goals that attorneys have answered in a survey as to why they're there. The first one is attract more clients. Our clients are out there. This is a great way for clients to look at my expertise, to see if I'm the right attorney for them. So number one reason for being at social media, get clients. But another reason for being up there is about establishing our credentials, establishing our expertise. And this is not just for our clients, but for other attorneys, for judges. Maybe we're looking at in the future to be able to have a new position or become partner or move up within our firm, or even sell our firm in a merger to another law firm or group. So the idea of being able to showcase your experience can be very, very important. And this can be a very prominent way of being able to do that. Now, we are going to have a session on privacy and confidentiality, so don't get too far out of control about what you actually put up in terms of what you say about yourself. Okay? Another reason for using social media is actually to help drive traffic and individuals back to your main website. Social media shouldn't replace your physical permanent website, but it actually should be a supplement or a complement to help individuals find more information, your expertise, and how to contact you right from your website. So it's a very important driver for that. Another reason why attorneys are out there in social media is to help find information relevant to what's going on in their practice area. It could be relevant to a case that they're looking at, or relevant to a new area of study that they want to get into. They might not be familiar with and just want to know what the latest trends are. Social media can be a great research tool for that. Okay? Social media is also wonderful for getting some feedback, for listening to see what are people saying about you and your firm in a very non-threatening way. Doing something like Google Alerts, where you can put in a certain phrase, maybe the name of your law firm, or some words related to your practice area. So I have a Google Alert that is about social media and law. And then every day I get an email from Google that tells me what are some of the latest articles or news or websites that have come out that deal with that subject matter. Again, it's an easy way, simple, convenient, organized, to get information that'll help me be better and more efficient in my practice. So those are some of our goals, okay? But part of those goals of getting the client and showcasing our expertise is also about our identity and making sure that our online persona matches our offline identity so that clients aren't caught off guard when they actually physically meet us after they get to know us on social media. And that brings us to this idea of social media and law. Now, there are three areas that I want us to look at when we think of social media and law. The first one is the idea of regulating the use of social media. And so if you think of it, think of the idea of sort of marketing, how marketers are using social media and being able to brand a company. And so some legal issues such as privacy, what's done when marketers collect information through social media, and what do they do with that data, okay? The second thing to look at is regulating the content of social media. Now, these will be issues such as intellectual property. If somebody cut and pasted something that you wrote and put it on their own website or their own blog, or somebody taking a photograph from somebody else and putting it on their Facebook page, okay? So a lot of intellectual property issues in there. But also, this is where we get into those issues related to employment law. Can a company terminate an employee for a posting that they put up on Facebook? Well, we'll see a little later on if that's a yes or a no answer. And as always, as a lawyer, I'm going to tell you, it depends. And the third area, besides the use of social media and the content of social media, is access to social media. And here we're looking at those kind of employee policies that say, employees cannot access social media while they're at work at all, to a recent law that was passed that said that teachers and students cannot become friends. This was in Missouri, through Facebook, nor can they access social media while at school. Okay? So we'll look at these three: the use, the content, and the access of social media. Now, I had mentioned before the issue of websites, firm websites, your individual websites. Some people say, well, is a website really part of the social media platforms? Well, it depends on how you set up your website, and if there is what's so important for social media, the idea of interactivity. But before we pass up this issue of websites, I do want to point out some very important issues with attorney websites that you need to be aware of before we move on. The first one is to make sure that because you're offering information on your website, that number one, you disclaim that the information there is not legal advice, but for educational purposes and evaluation purposes only. You want to make sure that you don't run into the situation where a potential client will say, well, I read it on your website, so it must have been true, and I made this decision, and it didn't come out the way that I expected it to. So be careful about that. Disclaimers are very important, and that's actually the topic of one of our future sessions. But the other issue that you don't want to do is that you don't want to inadvertently form an attorney-client relationship just because that individual went to your website. You want to make it very clear that just accessing information at your website or even sending you an email does not mean that the information will be kept confidential, nor that you've agreed to represent them yet without even having met them. These are very important issues to take a look at in your website. Another thing about your website to take a look at is make sure that what's there is very clear, that the potential client or individual that goes there does not misunderstand or feel confused about what's actually on your website. Okay? And take a look at the most important thing with data is the issue of breaches of confidentiality. Sometimes law firms are so excited about a case that they've won that they might actually post something about it on their news section without having the permission of their client first. So you want to always make sure you have permission for any client information that you put on your website, whether it's their photo at one of your holiday parties or a testimonial as to how great they thought your service was. Make sure you have permission before you put it on your website. Okay, so just leaving the website, let's go really into the social media. And one thing, or the last thing that I want to touch base on today, is how social media is actually used in different practice areas. Now, we're going to have specific sessions for specific practice areas later on, but I just want to give you an overview. And the first one is this idea of family law. Okay. Now, what's interesting is that I don't practice family law, but what I have found is that social media is actually very much used in family law. They estimate that 1 in 8 couples have met through an online medium, a dating service. But if you ask family law attorneys, what they will say is that 1 in 4 divorces will actually present evidence from a social media site. Yeah. And this can affect things like custody, it can affect things like alimony or child support. So it's very important that our clients understand that what is out there about them can affect some of their own life circumstances as they go forward in legal proceedings. Another area is criminal law, and we're seeing how crime enforcement and legal enforcement and police departments are actually setting up divisions within themselves just to monitor social media and being able to use that information that they find there in order to track criminals and defendants, as well as to be able to prove certain cases like DUI. Okay? Commercial law. Now think of businesses. Contracts are the name of the game for many of the transactions that we do. Well, we now have case law that says that a tweet can modify a contract. all done in 140 characters. So it's something to keep in mind that that communication on Twitter can be viewed as official company communication that can bind a company or an individual to a certain contract. Very important to keep that in mind. Now, I did mention about intellectual property and copyrights, but don't forget also, for those of you who are practicing in the art, music, and entertainment law, a big issue is also about defamation. When false statements are made about an individual that can damage their reputation and cause them financial harm through a tweet. And we'll see that a little later on in a future session as well. One last point that I want to bring up in terms of a legal area, and we're seeing this grow per se, are things that deal with personal injury cases or car crashes, for example, where an individual claims a particular harm and then they're shown on their social media network platform, you know, frolicking in the sun when they're supposed to have a neck injury. Okay, and these have also been brought into court and used as evidence against their claims. So I think what you're seeing here is about how social media has become so pervasive that just about every area or practice area of law can be touched on by social media, its use, its access, and its content. Okay, so that's a lot of information for our first session, is just being able to offer you an overview. So I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, make sure you send them to my email or through the blog comments so that I can get back to you. Thank you.